One of the cool things about this video that I was excited about was I'm actually going to get to draw a self-portrait. I miss drawing. As I've sort of gotten, like in the past couple of weeks, more into drawing, I'm like, dude, I love drawing. I'm going to show you some self-portraits that I've thumbnailed in some sketchbooks that I have. I'm going to show you self-portraits from over the years. And I'm going to actually create a self-portrait as part of the process. Let's look at what I've got. And honestly, a lot of them I'm pretty rusty, but really I'm just trying to defend myself here. January 2020. There's an interesting one. I can tell this paper is actually quite smooth. Got the full body in there. That one's funny. Who is that guy? It's fun. Boom. I mean, it kind of looks like me. And one of my favorite all-time self-portraits that I did, I think it's one of my most. Yeah, okay. I think that was pretty good, actually. You got my background. That's my old apartment in Whistler, BC. It was so small. It's my cat Charlie sitting up on the couch. That one's pretty good. That one's like ink and pencil crayon. More of just an accuracy, even in the drawing, like the outline. This one's funny. Okay, that's pretty interesting. Come on. There we go. This was a painting piece that I did. So why did I start doing self-portraits? I mean, I saw other artists doing them, like other famous artists, like the first one obviously that comes to mind is Rembrandt. And I always thought it was a really cool thing, especially when I was just getting started in art. I was still like shy to go and ask someone, hey, can I draw you? So, you know, being a bit of an introvert, I would just sit in front of a mirror and draw myself. Now that doesn't sound cool, but if you're an artist, it is cool. Honestly, my self-portrait process really was full force when I was in art school. That's when I was drawing the most and painting the most self-portraits. It was more in the earlier years when I was really diving deep into color theory and drawing theory, really, like how to create a form on a page. And here's the thing, I would draw my self-portraits with a mirror. I rarely, if ever, used a photograph. And I just found there was just that extra element of life. You know, when I looked at all the artists I admired, you know, like the Leonardos and the Peter Paul Rubens and John Singer Sargent and Van Gogh and Rembrandt and these artists that were incredible painters and had such a life and a vitality to their art, they would utilize different tools, and one of them was a mirror. And so that's sort of why I decided in the beginning to use a mirror, and why I continued to use it, because I found it just gave me that extra spark of life. I started with a pencil sketch yesterday. I am going to abandon that drawing because it wasn't working out very well. So what I noticed yesterday was that the way that I was using my pencils, I thought, you know, this would lend itself a lot better to charcoal. So that's what I'm doing. I'm switching and I'm gonna do a charcoal drawing, and I'm actually very excited about it because there's more range with charcoal because you can get really dark with it. But the last time I sat down and did a self-portrait like out of charcoal, I mean, this was art school. This was like 15 years ago. I went out today and I got some Vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is like a very soft charcoal. This is what I'm gonna be using to sketch in the initial drawing. So I'm gonna start with that and see how it goes. And then other than that, I'm going to be using these charcoal pencils. And you know, the same principles apply for the charcoal pencils as they do with the graphite, which is you have the range from harder to soft. So I'm going to be testing out different variants of that, from a 2B, which is like a medium, to a 4B, which is a soft, and a 6B, which is extra soft. And I'll probably end up using some of these little smudgers. I have an eraser. I couldn't track down a kneaded eraser, but I'm gonna try this one out. So anyways, that's what I'm gonna be doing today. Let's see how it goes. What did I learn? That's the big thing. What did I learn? Well, as I got into the drawing, I started to understand more how to create the space in the drawing and how to create the form in the drawing using the charcoal and using the different types of charcoal. So what I learned is that I have HB, 2B, 4B, and 6B. HB being the hardest charcoal and 6B being the softest charcoal, and also the darkest. So you can actually get the darkest darks with the 6B with the softest one. It was easier to soften the 6B charcoal and the 4B charcoal, the softer charcoals, into the background using the smudge thing here, which is just rolled up paper. And I learned the softer charcoals actually worked better for the background when I was sort of trying to fill it in and build up those layers. And it also worked for the sort of final layer of the drawing where I wanted to put in some really dark darks. So for instance, mostly in the hair, there were some really dark spots in the hair. Probably, you know, some of the darkest areas were in the hair. And so one of the last things I did was use my softer charcoal, which can go really dark, and I put in some of those features. I didn't really have white, like I do have a white charcoal here, but it wasn't really working to use it as like a highlight. So the white of the paper became the highlight in the drawing. If you use tone paper, then you can probably integrate like white and dark charcoal. One of the last things I did was I also brought in the the hard charcoal for sort of the final layer of putting in some cross hatching, sort of refining some of the lines in the face. It was a little more accurate, like I could sharpen it to a finer point than the softer charcoal, and then I could sort of really define some of those lines. Some of the areas of the drawing, I used this smudge tool to sort of create a kind of texture on the drawing. But I did find also, like for the face, it was a combination of sort of the smudged out layer and also the straight charcoal, which has more of a tooth. I don't know how to describe it, but it's darker and it's got more of a grain, and it just gives a different effect. So as I was drawing, I started to realize and see, okay, this is how the charcoal is interacting with the paper, and this is how I can use it. So that's one of the things that, you know, I find, especially when you're learning something, is that you have to really pay attention to what's happening with the materials and how they're interacting. And then as you go, you actually learn sort of the structure of how the relationships work and how to create your form. I did find throughout the process, it was like a slow process of building up the drawing. So I started with lighter values, and I slowly worked up the drawing and built up the drawing to go darker and darker and darker, and I kind of moved slowly. I wasn't totally used to drawing on my easel like this, so it took a while for me to get comfortable doing my cross-hatching with my hand. So that was kind of interesting, and so I built up that muscle a little bit, I guess you could say. I think I did 3 sessions of about an hour and a half. So this was between 3 and 4 hours, this drawing. And yeah, I think I'm satisfied with it. Initially I wasn't like too thrilled with how it was going, but I haven't done a charcoal drawing like this in 15 years where I'm sitting in front of, you know, an easel doing a drawing. So it was actually quite fun. It really just reminded me of when I was in school and when I was like studying art, and that's when I really had a lot of fun with what I was doing with my art. Was like I was studying it. I was like, wow, I'm learning something. So that was really cool to sort of go back to that, or not even go back to it, but introduce it again into my art practice. So there's the final charcoal drawing. I mean, what do you think? Where is it? Very stoic looking. I'm always very stoic looking in my drawings. Okay. All right, so that is the charcoal drawing process.